comes from,
What?
who paid? Well, yeah, I guess where's the,
Yeah,
where's
the money come
The
from?
town had to pay. I don't, Terry could probably answer more. I think the penalty is that they withhold state aid from you.
State funds.
Yeah. Well,
But that's a cash flow problem, though.
I don't know that we know all the logistics to talk about that in
we would need to
detail.
research.
All we're saying
Yeah.
is that, you know, again, we're trying to make the cuts that we
Right.
feel we have to make here, and what we're saying is we don't wanna put ourselves and the town in any kind of jeopardy. We do need to try to meet the 990 hours. We haven't scheduled the building, so we don't actually know what that looks like right now, but that is something obviously we need to pay close attention to.
mathematically, it would tell you that
Mathematically, yeah.
you're gonna have to have
Yeah.
more study help.
Now, you can, if you're doing study halls, you can do directed studies, which can count, but that's staff intensive, right? So now you've gotta have
Right.
people that
Still have to hire
are willing
somebody.
to
Right.
be teaching, you know, during that time, and right now that hasn't been the approach that we've had, and we're reducing staff.
How would you do
So,
that?
yeah.
Okay.
We're also looking
I
at,
digress.
so if we're looking at the reductions we're making at the middle and high school level, we know that we're in the same building, we share staff. We would be looking at if we're looking at a .2 being cut from a subject area, we may end up with a shared staff because a teacher would be at a .8
Right.
and maybe a .2 would be at the high school. So we have to both keep the same schedule. So with that, our middle school students would be guaranteed a study hall if they're not in an exploratory language during the day.
Right.
And we're cutting also, if we're looking at the electives.
Right.
So we would be deficient of time and learning hours in the middle school.
So just to finish the list, we have .5 high school special ed. Teacher, again, same thing with this cut or reduction. If we are successful in our plan to, you know, be able to bring students into our program, this position would be reinstated. And then we have.
Can I just say something on that,
Of course,
Joe?
Dave, of course.
We've talked a lot about bringing students back into the district and from out of district, and the high school has worked extremely hard in developing programs, and when we look at these cuts, there's 1.5 teachers, a full-time aide, and a .6 tutor from the high school. I will tell you right now, it'll put a tremendous strain on bringing more students back. The next tier of students that we're looking at out of district to really kind of focus on and bring them back, and actually before the school year is over, 3 of them have already scheduled visits to visit our programs, are 5 high school students. And so when you take away the staff from the high school, the potential of bringing more back at the high school level, you know, the Compass program started last year. We were able to bring 3 students back to the Compass program successfully. The parents are extremely happy with it. It's been a tremendous success. The second half of this year, as of January 24th, we've already brought back 2 students to the high school. That's 5 students in 1 year. That will stop, because we will not have the ability to bring those students back. And the next year, out of the next 6 students that are out of district right now, that we've been working diligently to bring these programs to credibility and really have them validated, so that we can bring parents in and can bring advocates in and lawyers and doctors that have done assessments, is to get these programs to where they're at. By eliminating that much of a staff from the high school alone, we will not be looking at bringing those students back, because we've brought all of our students back to the middle school that we can at this time, except for 1. And the next really large group of students, we have very few students that are out at the elementary levels. So the greatest number of students that we have out of district right now, and we really are on the bubble of creating some great programs to bring them back. And so the potential of bringing those next 5 high school students back will really be put at a roadblock at this point in time.
What about that social emotional program you were putting in place because of the class that's moving up from Pembroke?
That's at the middle school.
Yeah.
Is that still gonna?
That's gonna be in the level services budget, or that's gonna
That is
be
in
in
the-
the recast budget that you see. We have to have
Okay,
that.
yeah.
And to Dave's point, I mean, well, I completely agree with him. What I think I've been trying to illustrate tonight is that the cuts are the cuts on the list, but the plan is that the money that comes back in, and I'm pretty optimistic that Dave's gonna be able to bring at least 1 student back, that will probably fill the gap here. So that, in our opinion, those programs are essential to be funded at their full level, but we need $877,000 worth of cuts, and we're looking at all departments. So that's the one place we have a chance to backfill. These other things, we don't have
Probably
funding
for the
source to
tuition.
backfill.
For the
Yeah,
tuition,
that's
transportation.
right, that's
And
right.
When we talk about quality of services, if we go back to cutting the program staff from the Studies and Strategies program, that redistributes those children to really start to put an additional burden on the 3 programs that are left. And so when you look at that, now the caseload of those teachers who are running those programs, who have some high intense students, goes from 13 or 14 in the alternative school and 15 or 18 in the life skills program up to approximately 30. So they become those teachers that are running programs
It's the
now
same
become the
concept as
liaison.
elementary.
Now the students that are running those programs, not only are the liaison for their own students, but they're now the liaison for kids that they don't even have that were in that study skills program and that strategies program. So what happens is potentially we're taking those 3 remaining programmatic teachers and we're saying not only are you going to run your program, but you're going to be the liaison for these other kids that are just on IEPs that are in the regular education.
Right. So the goal is to maintain those programs, right? So
That's
then-
why they were there on the list.
That's
Yeah.
where they, why
Right.
they're where they are on the list. The 1.0 teacher, this is a grade 2 Pembroke cut, 46,580. Currently in 2nd grade, there are 6 teachers. And basically, what we're looking at for next year, the average class size would be 24 to 25 students. And then we have the .5 reading tutor. This is also at Pembroke, and this would impact our intervention services for reading. So, the bottom line here is that that is 19.02 FTE reduction. Or $872,089.
Some of these are, well, let me start with, this is awful. We'll start with that.
Thank you.
So I don't
Thank you.
understate that. I've been doing this a long time, and I'll echo what Mr. Lucia said, that we are in the academic program, so we're cutting out the very reason why we exist
Right.
at this point. And the part that is the most troubling, we have to reconcile what the cost of public education is to the people of the community.
Right.
And that's always the challenge. And I think that this board for a number of years has been very diligent in trying to keep costs under control and trying to get the most of every dollar we spend. I think we've proven that.
Our
The fact that we're-
budgets have never increased more than 5%. In most cases, the request has been below that.
That's right. And if you look at where we are, and I'll say the dreaded per pupil spending, 'cause I think we're actually close to a real number now, so the town can't argue about what's per pupil spending, the real number and what we think the number is. But since we're near the bottom, and given how we perform academically, it's a pretty good investment. Where we have problems is it's getting to a point where, it's not getting to a point, it's at the point where we have parents who live in this community who are shouldering a disproportionate share
Absolutely.
of education, and their children, and I really look at this from being a parent myself and what my parents did for us. The environment you have today is heavily fee-based on non-academic areas. Parents are paying thousands of dollars above and beyond their property taxes for schooling,
Right.
and we have a generation or 2 generations above them where it was a lot different. So if we're starting to transition into public education be funded by parents in the future, period. That's a different argument to have, but we're going there. We're just going in that direction anyway. And we really have to have that discussion very quickly, because just looking at next year, you look at the fiscal 13 budget, and this, I won't be here for that, but
Well, it compounds.
it just gets worse. So now you're cutting out full academic sections out of the curriculum. And this is not something that's tolerable. It's not something that we can just live with. It's not the, well, we'll just go figure it out thing. That's not what this is all about. This is about hundreds of students in study halls occupying space, not learning anything. This is about kids not having choice. This is about an opportunity for parents to start looking at better options for their kids outside of Georgetown.
More expensive, but.
And start thinking about, well, rather than people wanting to come here and choice into Georgetown, people want a choice out of here depending on what other capacity exists. You talk about athletics, it now comes down to who's not the athlete. It comes down to who has the bigger checkbook and who can afford to write, or it comes down to parents who can't afford to pay for their kids, but they're not at that threshold where they're not on a free or reduced lunch program, so they're scraping and compromising necessities to put their kids, give their kids an opportunity. talking about clubs and National Honor Society. It's absolutely, I have one
Paying
word,
for their own
it's
pants.
pathetic. Where we are right now is absolutely pathetic, and I'm hoping the community understands that we are in a situation right now, and I don't want this to be misunderstood. I appreciate everything that Georgetown has done for its kids over the
Absolutely.
years. I mean, I know I've been vocal about it.
We're grateful for the
We
money
are,
we have,
absolutely. Absolutely. But this is not the normal annual conversation. This is very, very different, and I'm just hoping that the townspeople understand as we start talking about overrides. Because, obviously, I came in tonight with a mindset of saving, core teachers, frontline individuals who directly impact students and save academic programs. And there are some things in here that I think are okay to
Yeah,
cut.
I think in my memo I said
You did,
we
you
can't
did.
support most of the cuts.
Right.
There
That's
are
right.
some that
That's
we,
right.
and they're at the top of the list.
But areas where we start to put ourselves in a tipping point, and again, we watch out for the interests of the town. We're
Of
talking about
course
the
we do.
town departments
Yeah.
and everything else, is that we can't hit a tipping point where we're spending more money with kids choicing out of here. That's a bad thing. We can't have kids going to other school systems for special education after we reversed that cycle dramatically, which is a testament to the administration doing a phenomenal job. So those are, to me, those are investments in the fact of saving this town from going into more of a dire financial situation. So those are things that obviously, I see on your pecking order why you have them the way you do. But we have to start having a discussion as far as how much of this list of cuts that we will be talking about to package for some type of override.
Well,
I
think,
never thought I had to say that word again,
Well,
but
I think one of the things that we kind of hear like a little bit of rumbling about in town, and I've actually received a few emails to this effect, and I don't know if it's something that the school and town work together on, but there doesn't appear to be as a big an appetite for operating overrides.
Mhm.
But one of the things that has been suggested is if there were to be an override, would it make more sense to have it be an override for things that their members of the public see as, assets that they, so for example, custodial maintenance? Would it make sense for, an override to be pulled together from schools and town for, to maintain the buildings better, to coordinate the maintenance, to, maintain, the town buildings? And then that would because we're at net school spending, that would allow whatever amount of money that is from our budget to be used to
But what
reinstate some of
percentage-
these things.
Yeah, the
Of
problem-
our budget is that?
That's the
That's my
problem.
question.
Well-
What percentage is custodial
And
and
we're
maintenance?
actually pulling that together because Mike Farrell asked us to.
I
And
know
that's my
it's
next
not
point.
much.
This budget,
It's more than you think, I think.
as ugly
Okay.
as George has painted it, and the discussion we just had for the last half hour, doesn't have anything in there for the fact that our buildings are falling apart, and we
Correct.
have emergency. Hell, in the last 4 weeks, we've spent,
Oh,
besides
Hurley.
the
Just take
snow,
Hurley.
we've spent $150,000 on coils and floods and all that.
Yeah.
And as our schools, we need a new roof at the high school. None of this
Is in there.
even addresses, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Our
That
schools are
wasn't
getting
even-
older. Our systems are
That
getting
wasn't
older.
even in the level services budget area.
Right.
Right.
So my
So-
point is, as ugly as this is, it's even an uglier picture because we're going to have to spend on some of those things and then make future cuts during the year on even more programs to pay for those necessities of maintenance.
The
So.
administrators will tell you that when is the budget frozen every year?
For
Something-
90 days, right?
October.
So we haven't
October.
really spent any money for 3 years.
Right,
Right, so they
The budget's-
budget,
right.
and
yeah.
they don't get to spend it because these extraordinary situations occur, and the budget needs to be frozen, so.
And by the way,
Right,
there's,
it's good to point that out.
I mean, really, our buildings are to keep safe and have a safe environment for the learning that's supposed to go
That's
on
right.
inside the buildings.
Right.
And we're now sacrificing the learning.
And we've already sacrificed the structure.
It's so. I understand your point that on an override on maintenance that would free up some
I'm not
money.
suggesting, I'm just saying that's something that I hear being discussed.
Yeah.
on the
there's
sideline.
there's legitimacy to that argument.
There is, sure.
Because we're not, I don't think we're really good at it. I think that shows.
Good at
um,
maintenance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and to go to the override part,
Pretty good example of it this month, but yeah.
regarding the fact whether or not there's an appetite, there never is an appetite.
Appetite. No,
So,
I understand.
and by the way, I'm not saying I disagree with that either. I just think that at times there's periods of adjustment.
Yeah.
So there's periods of where things go out of sync. We have a tax system in Georgetown that obviously is heavily dependent on individuals because our commercial side and